Sorry. Hey guys, number 19. Alright. This one is What Do Bees Like? Bees First Beekeeping Part 2. Gathering a small swarm handful by handful. I won't be doing that. Not gonna happen. Okay. In part 2 of this series on Bees First Beekeeping, we'll be talking about what queen bees like. Basically, a queen bee likes to fly up into the face of the sun while dozens of lusty drones race to catch her. Queen bees like mating with many drones, and she was created to achieve this goal. The drone's reproductive organs were made to glow like a flare. Each drone who mates with our queen leaves it behind after their in-flight union, ensuring that other drones will have no problem seeing their target. After a few mating flights, a queen will hold in her womb the sperm of a dozen or more drones, a veritable kettle of genetic diversity right there in her long and slender belly. It is this rich abundance of genetic material that is what has made bees so successful in the world for many, many years. Which brings us to our third bees first tenet. Number 3. We allow queens to mate naturally and with many drones so they have an expansive gene pool. Swarming is a desirable and proven means of colony reproduction. These topics are hot buttons in the world of today. An important part of beginning beekeeping is to look at the information out there and make a preliminary choice as to what kind of beekeeping feels right and good to you. You'll be changing your methods as you learn, finding what works best for your bees, you, and your living situation. But you have to start somewhere, and I believe there is much to be said for a kinder, gentler sort of beekeeping that puts the bees' needs first and foremost, and I agree. In the comment section of part 1, Ron made a very good point about treatment-free beekeeping, which is the kind of beekeeping I'm proposing. Same for us. If you are buying packaged bees and queens from another state, you are buying bees who will not make it in a bees first treatment-free apiary or yard. These bees are highly domesticated and very different from feral bees. Another reason we won't be buying packaged bees. Having been bred to function in high production, heavily managed and treated systems, these bees have been robbed of their genetic ability to live wild and untreated. Domesticated animals no longer live under the dictates of natural selection. They live under the hand of human selection, and we select bees and animals that suit our preferences. Randy Oliver, the scientific beekeeper, has an excellent article on the domestication of bees. For example, many beekeepers don't appreciate bees who propolize heavily, and bees have now been selected for many years with low propolis production. The sticky stuff made primarily of resins, enzymes, and wax can glue up parts of a hive as though they've been bonded with superglue. Bees, however, have a very particular need for propolis. Honeybees have a little internal immune system. Propolis, its qualities and aroma, is the external immune system of the honeybee. That tantalizing scent you smell when you open a hive comes not just from the nectar, but more so from the propolis. Propolis is an amazing compound. It is healing in so many ways and is still used throughout Europe in dental clinics for its ability to kill bacteria and heal gum disease. In the U.S., it is being studied as a treatment for MRSA and many other antibiotic-resistant infections. It is also the base of the varnish Stradivarius used on his violins. Versatile, powerful propolis. What a gift from the bees. If you think about it, resins have been treasured in the healing arts for centuries. When the wise men gave Jesus 3 precious gifts, 2 of them, frankincense and myrrh, were resins valued as highly as gold. So now we've been trying to fight off varroa mites and viruses without the benefits of heaps of propolis in their hives. We have taken away their ability to craft their own medicine, just like the government did us. Queen cells being prepared prior to swarming. Yeah. Let's bring this discussion of domesticity back to our subject, queens. If you buy your bees in a package, the queen bee will have been artificially inseminated by a drone or two selected for its ability to, for example, make lots of honey, be gentle, not propolize, and build up quickly in the spring. Your queen will not be related to any of the bees in the box you have purchased. That is why she will be in her own little screened container. Set loose in the box, she would be immediately killed by the worker bees who recognize her as a foreign threat. She becomes accepted only after the disheartened bees realize they have no option but this interloper. This queen will have been created by bee sellers through a process similar to the one bees use to create an emergency queen. If a hive suddenly and unexpectedly loses its queen, the bees can craft an emergency queen by building up a queen cell around a worker bee egg and feeding it a diet of royal jelly only, queen food. In 2 weeks or so, voila, the hive will have a new virgin emergency queen. This new queen was not intended to be a queen from the start, but she will do in a pinch. This queen was laid in a worker bee cell rather than a vertical queen cell, and her start in life was in older and horizontal comb. It seems that bees do not keep their emergency queens for long. Within a year, bees craft a vertical queen cup of fresh wax, guide the old emergency queen to it, and coax her to deposit an egg there, and craft what some of us call a royal queen, a queen intended for royalty from the very start. Packaged queens are made by pulling worker eggs out of their cells and placing them in artificial queen rearing cells that mimic the vertical shape of the true queen cell, or by putting a group of bees into a smaller hive with no queen but a comb of newly laid worker eggs. The bees, realizing they are suddenly queenless, go about making new queens as quickly as they can. When these queens hatch, they are then drugged with carbon dioxide so they can have drone sperm inserted. That's not even right. Very often, this is the queen you are buying, crafted in an emergency state, mated with few drones, genetically compromised, and unrelated to her hive. Most likely, she will come from another geographical region, perhaps utterly differing in climate from your own. In the wild, this queen would not live for long. In your hive, she probably won't either. Back in the day, queen bees could remain fertile for 4 to 8 years. Now, I read that conventional beekeepers are having to replace their packaged queen every 6 months. That's ridiculous. In a natural environment, new queens are created as a hive prepares to swarm. If the old queen's fertility is declining, which they can ascertain by her scent, or as we've already covered, when they suddenly find themselves queenless, I'm going to ask you to step back for a moment from the science of beekeeping into the mystery. There are many, many things we do not understand about bees. Could it be, for example, that there is a very specific reason why bees do not, unless they are forced through emergency, create a queen in anything but fresh new wax? Is there any reason why she is crafted vertically from day one? Is it possible that queen bees are able to determine which egg they will excrete to create a queen from perhaps a dozen or more genetic lines a wild mated queen carries inside of her? While we cannot know any of this, there is some evidence for all of it. Consider that all of the bees in the hive, the queen is the longest, thus the one longest exposed to pathogens and pesticides, which accumulate in beeswax over time. Could this be a reason the bees craft their royal queens from fresh wax? If we simply add a dash of humility to our beekeeping, we may admit that perhaps there is a wisdom to the way queen bees mate and live. Perhaps we ought to respect that. As a new beekeeper, you might be asking yourself, where in the world you are going to find these royal queens if you find yourself in need of one? It's easy. You will find them locally. Many small apiary or backyard keepers raise their own queens from emergency cells, but allow their local queens to fly free and mate, ensuring their bounty of genetic diversity. You might be able to track down queens like this from treatment-free beekeepers. I would go so far as to say this: if you cannot locate local bees or miss catching a spring swarm, put your beekeeping off until you do. Packaged bees from outside of your geographical area are that bad of an option. This brings us to the second aspect of bee reproduction in our third tenet, swarming. Sojourner hive prepares for a big swarm. What? Swarming is considered a bad thing in conventional beekeeping and in much of backyard beekeeping as well. Many beekeepers will tell you that it is just plain stupid to lose 2/3 of your hive plus your queen in a swarm, which you will. Also, many beekeepers believe you are being a bad beekeeper if you allow your hives to swarm and terrify your neighborhood. Swarming is a fascinating celebratory event in the life of a bee colony. Bees don't swarm in spring unless they have a good winter, so swarm represents an exuberant, successful parent hive. Bees plan their swarm event weeks in advance. Everything has to be in place. A slimmed-down queen made ready for flight, lots of brood and bees to stay behind and rekindle the hive, lots of scouts and young bees, and lots of honey and pollen. The weather has to be right. Drones have to be flying. New queen cells need to be filled and capped. Professor Thomas Seeley has written an entire marvelous book on the subject called Honeybee Democracy, and it reads more like an Indiana Jones adventure than a research document. I'll have to look that up. If you've ever had the thrill of standing 2 feet in front of a hive and had a swarm pour out like honey and spill over you and been immersed in the sound of 20,000 bees spiraling around you like an angel choir, you have been truly blessed in this lifetime to witness one of the great miracles of nature. A superorganism rebirthing itself. And if you have experienced such a thing, you could never imagine subduing such a force. Although we know, thanks to Seeley, exactly how a swarm prepares itself and how it seeks a new home, we can never know the deep and complex benefits of swarming for bees. We do know, also thanks to Seeley, that hives that swarm more often are healthier overall than hives whose swarming urges are suppressed by hive splitting, brood rearranging, and queen cell destruction. So remember that. One theory as to why swarming does bees good is that swarming creates a break in brood rearing, and varroa mites can only reproduce in brood cells. The swarm will have no new brood or bees until a new home is found. Combs are constructed again, and the queen gets busy laying again. The hive that remains behind will need to hatch a new queen and see her successfully mated before any brood rearing begins. And from experience, I can tell you that sometimes the new queen decides to wait a while before she begins laying, sometimes up to 2 months. This break in the brood cycle seems to be very good for bees. We also know that when the old queen flies out with a swarm, the sunlight rekindles her hormones and jumpstarts her for another good year of laying. Think about it. The queen only sees the light of day a few times in her life. Once when she has her mating flights, and then only when her hive swarms. Otherwise, she lives in total darkness. It's not good. Not for anything. Otherwise, the queen has a very special relationship with the sun. The sunlight in her eyes reawakens her, and she is literally renewed in the swarming process. Swarming bees are all of a mind to make a new home and quickly. They are ramped up for wax production, for foraging, for propolis gathering, for nursing brood. They have with them their queen, their reason for living, and the new hive begins to hum with wholesome activity. The bees that come to you in a box are all strangers to each other. They were literally shaken out of their hives and poured into a funnel, and from the funnel to the screened box. They are not filled up with honey reserves. They were not of a chemical, hormonal, biological mind to relocate. They are hungry, queenless, and without related kin, and honeybees know their genetic kin within their hives. Agitated and homeless, these bees are shocked, exhausted refugees. In many cases, a large portion of the box of bees is dead before they ever make it to your home and hive. Then they have to learn to work together and to accept their strange and unwelcome queen. Can you imagine for a moment the stress put upon these bees? And can you imagine what stress does to an immune system? How can this be a good way to be a beekeeper? So let's address the objections to swarming. We have already learned that the swarming break is good for our bees who remain behind. Although we lose our old queen and a huge mass of bees, the bee numbers can be back up in as little as a week or 2. Yes, it may put a break in honey production for a while, but if we are bees first beekeepers, we care most for the well-being of our bees. We are backyard beekeepers, for goodness sake, not commercial honey producers. About the neighbors. Every situation is different, just as every colony of bees is different. In my own neighborhood, I have had as many as 11 swarms issue from my yard in only 2 months' time, and not one neighbor ever noticed. My friend Anna had 15 swarms from her yard of 5 hives last year. Doesn't anyone ever look up these days? Not where I live. So I grab the neighbors and bring them to see the swarms and talk about how exciting and amazing swarming is. There's another one. Often I end up retrieving swarming bees barehanded, like when they mass on the chain link fence, or like last summer on the underside of a bird bath. Bees in swarm mode are usually very gentle. They have cast their fates to the wind, literally, and have little to defend. Also, they're so crammed full of honey, about 3 days' worth in their bellies, it is hard for them to sting. When people see you lifting handfuls of bees into a basket, they change instantly, and forever. Their perceptions about bees and their supposed danger. Swarms are teaching moments, big-time teaching moments. Don't waste them. There are a couple of risks for any hive that chooses to swarm. Sometimes the new queens fly out to mate and do not make it back home. Perhaps some hungry swallow put an end to her homecoming. In such a case, the hive is usually constructed up to a dozen queen cells so they have plenty of chances for one of them to mate and return home. If they all fail, the hive will die. The bees will have no fresh eggs left to create an emergency queen. This is where you may step in with a new, naturally mated queen from a local breeder. This is something you can do that will actually help your bees. You cannot save the colony, as the queen you will introduce is unrelated to your bees, so all offspring will be of a new genetic line. Your bees will only exist long enough to raise their first brood, forage a bit, and perish. But these last working bees will leave you a comb and nectar and with a brand new queen-right colony. I have had colonies that were so swarm crazy they finally swarmed themselves to death. One of my hives cast 8 swarms in 2 months. It then took her a long time to requeen herself, but after that she never fully came back. She perished in the autumn, but the 6 of the 8 swarms she sent out survived. There are a host of theories about why bees would swarm again and again. I've read that bees in areas where there are few honeybee hives will pour out swarms as if trying to make up for the dearth of bees in the neighborhood. Personally, I believe that swarming is a time of exhilaration and jubilee, and I like to imagine bees do it because it is wildly life-affirming and just plain fun. Note my bee gear. Swarms are usually so gentle you could easily collect them stark naked, but the police might object. This season I have come to deeply appreciate the importance of the queen bee in her hive. I have 6 hives right now that are from 2 different lines of bees. 3 came from swarms from my friend Anna's yard. 3 came from a hollow tree a few miles away. All 6 of these colonies were what we call secondary or cast swarms. That is, these swarms came after the prime swarm of the season that would have included the original queen from the hive. They were all populated with virgin queens who needed a mate after they got home to my yard. These 6 hives are all vastly different from each other, even though there are only 2 different lines of queens. Some built up incredibly quick, one kept building wax all season and only stopped a couple weeks ago. They all have different hygienic qualities. Some toss out sick larvae, some groom each other so thoroughly it's a wonder they end up with any body hair all the time. Or body hair by the time the groomer bee is finished with them. Some will headbutt me to keep me back. Some I can literally put my nose into their entrance. None of these colonies have shown any interest in robbing out the weaker ones. Clearly, all this variation is the result of the many drones each queen mated with. The quality of the queens depends very much on the quality of the queens in your area, and the more, the better. Well, that's a lot of information, a lot of really good information to remember. So, I mean, I'm going to be writing this stuff down, so that kind of changes my perception on a few things, so yeah. Anyway. Like I said, that's a lot of really good information, and we'll be getting on to the next one here pretty soon. And I'm going to get this video uploaded. And again, if you're interested in the Peppermint Charcoal Detox Bar, please leave a comment. leave a comment. Let me know. I will comment back and get your information or your email, and we'll connect and get your information, and I will get you a bar sent out to you. Totally free to you. These are free because I just want to get them out there so people can experience, can use them and see what they're like. So just let me know. Leave a comment and like the videos, share them on all your platforms, share them with your friends, fellow homesteaders, and anybody that you think might like them. And I'm going to get this video up there, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.